This is part 3 of my lecture on Lucretius. In books 5 and 6, Lucretius turns to consider the universe. Once again, Lucretius argues that against the religious explanation in favor of the philosophical explanation concerning the way that the world and everything in it works, in order to help to allay the fears concerning natural phenomena that are only exacerbated by the superstitious explanation. For if we think that earthquakes, hurricanes, and pandemics are the result of the gods, and we can't predict what the gods will do, then we'll be in a persistent state of uncertainty with respect to natural phenomena, and that uncertainty leads to fear and anxiety. If we reject the religious explanation in favor of the scientific and philosophical explanation, then we'll come to better understand the actual causes of natural phenomena, in which case we'll be able to better predict when they might occur and be better prepared for them. So once again, Lucretius seeks to provide a scientific, philosophical explanation in place of the human-made religious explanation. For since humans cannot see the causes of things, they reckon it is by God's agency. And again, pause here to read this one. Lucretius believes that the religious explanation fails not only because it doesn't provide a good explanation of natural phenomena, but also because it causes more fear. The religious explanation of the universe causes more fear because the actions and desires of the gods are unpredictable. In fact, whereas scientific study, experiments, and observation will at some point uncover the causes of certain phenomena, no such study or experiences or observations can ever lead to certainty with respect to the workings of the gods. And again, uncertainty causes fear. But add to that the fact that we don't really know what those powerful gods want, and we can never know what those gods want us to do or not to do, and it turns out that there's good reason to be scared about how we're supposed to treat the gods and what might happen if we don't. However, Lucretius argues, all such fear can be dispelled when we reason about this stuff in a rational way. So Lucretius explains, I'll show you many things that will allay your fears, set forth in words of wisdom, so you don't surmise, hag-ridden by religion, that the earth, the sun, the skies, the sea, the star, the moon, are bodies holy and sublime, and made of godly stuff that must endure throughout all time. And so you don't believe it should be treated as a crime, as heinous as the one the giants were guilty of, to bring the ramparts of the world tumbling down with reasoning. Lucretius argues that we don't have to believe that Earth was created for humans as part of some immortal being's plan, and he maintains that it's ludicrous to think that no argument can work against a religious creationist explanation of the world. So pause to read this one. According to Lucretius, humans probably came up with the supernatural explanation only because they didn't have an understanding of the real causes of natural phenomena and the way that the world works. He writes, humans observed the orderly movement of the heavens and beheld the cycling of the year with its returning seasons, but could not fathom how these came about, and lacking reasons, found an escape by handing these things over to the gods. And suppose that all things came about by supernatural nods, and established the seat of the gods up in the quarters of the sky, for it's through the heavens we see night and moon go wheeling by. It's because we don't fully understand nature that we pray when hurricanes come our way. And it's a lack of understanding that results in the belief that gods are the cause of earthquakes and other natural disasters that would otherwise seem to come from nowhere. So pause here to read. Lucretius goes on to explain that when humans invented gods, they also invented their characteristics and the rituals that must be practiced in the name of piety. Pause again. But it turns out that the religious explanation leads to more and more questions that cannot be answered, and so it leads to superstitious fright and dread of the gods. Pause here. Many of Lucretius's arguments against the superstitious explanation involve pointing to certain flaws, problems, and harmful things in the universe that no intelligent being would have intentionally created or designed. So consider this: the universe was not created for our sake by powers divine, since as it stands, it is so deeply flawed. What's the reason nature multiplies and feeds the enemies of man on land and sea? How does it come about disease abounds? And Lucretius points out some of the things that would have and should have been different if things on earth were created by gods. For example, wouldn't gods make it so that natural disasters affect only bad people and not the good? So pause here to read. At the very least, wouldn't the gods want to protect their own shrines, temples, and statues that they asked humans to build? Again, pause here. In general, arguments against the religious explanation of the universe that involve examples that point to unnecessary and unjustified suffering in the world typically fall under what philosophers call the problem of evil. So, an example of the problem of evil might be pointing to COVID 19 as an example, maintaining that if the earth was designed by intelligent gods, then there wouldn't be a pandemic like this that affects good, innocent people who are trying to make the world a better place. And that's perhaps the reason why Lucretius provides such a detailed description of the plague of Athens, a plague that occurred about 300 years before Lucretius was even born. So pause to read that. One other example of the problem of evil that one might use against the creationist account occurred in Lucretius's own home about 170 years after Lucretius was born, when the city of Pompeii was destroyed and many of its citizens killed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. And this ends part 3 of the lecture.